Finally, somebody's actually gonna use these runes. Unflinching approach velocity. How's it going, Summoners? My name is Dan, and I'm here to welcome you to our channel once again. With the new patch just around the corner, it's about that time that we hit you with another ProGuides meta update. This is the 10.12 edition, so if you're looking for all the information you need for the next patch in one place, look no further. Next patch is a wild one with a ton of champion balance changes, as well as major changes to the various systems available to us. One thing I do want to mention though is that we have a Discord community as well as a subreddit that we want you to be a part of. Make sure to check out the description for links to join those. Also, for our question of the day, if you could suddenly wake up and become the best player of a single champion, which one would you choose? Personally, I'd want to be the best Lucian player because he can be played in 3 different lanes. I feel like if I was super good at him, I could hard carry in 3 different roles. Let me know what your answers are in the comments below. Now, let's get started with the video. First up is the top lane. While we don't necessarily want to speed right through everything, speed is everything we want to talk about. Top laners are definitely going to be running Summoner Ghost more often than before. The buffs that are currently planned are absolutely massive, as the ramp-up time will be removed. Champions with high kill pressure like Darius, Renekton, Hecarim, and Tryndamere are going to abuse this without a doubt. Having the ability to chase opponents down a lane is an absolute game changer, a game breaker rather. There will definitely be a massive shift in the meta in regards to top laners who don't run teleport. Other champions like Singed will also love these buffs as well. Another burst of speed comes from the changes to Predator. The rune will have a much shorter cooldown, and by the way, we've actually covered all this stuff in our upcoming changes video. Make sure to subscribe so that you can receive notifications for informative videos just like these. Basically, the same set of champions are going to love this buff to Predator nonetheless. Juggernauts who'll give anything to get their hands on their opponents are definitely going to start using this keystone much more often. Top laners that like to roam will also make use of Predator on a regular basis. Stay well informed and experiment with Predator next patch, as you might find that it will be just the thing you need to find more successful roams. One of the biggest changes we expect to see is that Unflinching will become an extremely popular rune. This rune is absolutely busted. It provides free tenacity, meaning that a bunch of champions won't even have to think twice about buying Ninja Tabby anymore. There's plenty of tenacity to go around from both the Resolve tree as well as the Inspiration tree. Mercury treads are going to be much less of a necessity than before because of this. Not every top laner likes to run the Precision tree, so those that want to run the Resolve tree will be able to access tenacity without forcing themselves to run Precision as a secondary. In response to all the various changes, our analysts heavily speculate that Olaf top will become an OP pick. Summoner Ghost getting buffed spells trouble for top laners, as Olaf is definitely happy to trade his Ghost for an enemy flash any day of the week. The cooldown is still relatively short for a summoner spell, and the movement speed it provides increases Olaf's kill pressure immensely. Of course, approach velocity will also remain a staple on Olaf, as it'll make him even harder to run away from. Also, following up on the marksman trend in the top lane, yes, they're still good. In fact, those Zeal buffs have been doing a lot for them. If you're looking to play lane bullies, it's not a bad idea to pick a ranged top laner. They're relatively safe picks, but at the end of the day, they do have their limitations. There isn't a single champion who doesn't have at least one bad matchup, and this includes ranged top laners as well. A bunch of champions have been finding success as a result of the Zeal buffs. The buffs go wide, hitting melee champions like Yasuo and Tryndamere, as well as marksmen like Lucian. Unfortunately, Gnar isn't finding much success just yet, but we've got some other news in the fact that Vayne and Quinn in the top lane are actually doing quite well for themselves. In the current state of the top lane, definitely make sure you don't ignore ranged top laners. Alright, that wraps up the top lane. Let's head on to the jungle next. Our first topic of discussion in the jungle is about Olaf, who we just talked about. Not only will he see a surge in his top lane play, but he'll also become more sought after as a jungle pick. Predator Olaf with Ghost and Approach Velocity was quite popular a while back, and this coming patch might be all that's required for its comeback. Olaf is already an S tier pick, and this patch will definitely not make him weaker. He'll at least have another build path he can take, even if it ends up becoming a niche one. Versatility is never a bad asset to have after all. So, as a result of those Zeal buffs, Graves has been popping off pretty hard. Phantom Dancer is a heavily underrated item on him. The lifeline shield, as well as the ridiculous amount of movement speed it provides, gives Graves a ton of outplay potential. After surviving some initial burst damage, Graves is able to kite his opponents with relative ease as a result of how much extra movement speed Phantom Dancer provides him. Believe it or not, champions like Ezreal are actually starting to make their comeback into the jungle. He's our prime example, but marksman junglers might become a bit more popular now as a result of the HP buffs a lot of them received on patch 10.11. The extra health gives marksmen the little extra edge they needed to clear their jungles effectively enough. Although we don't expect Ezreal to ever return to his former glory as the most contested jungle pick in the game, this is at the very least a start to his return to the jungle. Once again, we need to talk about Predator. Junglers are the ones who use this keystone the most, and I'm sure that many of them will happily start using it once again. Picks like Gragas and Fiddlesticks will be able to find more successful ganks as a result of the decreased cooldown on Predator. While they've lost some damage on the keystone, it's definitely worth the trade-off as they'll be able to power up their ganks more frequently. Junglers that can utilize Predator are going to be so much better off than before, and you definitely need to watch out for them. Next on the agenda is the mid lane. We got some massive nerfs headed Yasuo's way. Once again, we covered those in our upcoming changes video, but to keep it short, his base health will be reduced and instead his passive shield will be slightly stronger. Our analysts believe that this will end up leaving his win rate in low elo around the same, but drastically drop it in high elo. Players in high elo work hard to take every inch they can while trying to secure advantages over their opponents. Yasuo's wind wall cooldown is also being increased. This ability is easily one of the most broken ones in the game, and increasing the cooldown already makes him feel so much less appealing as a pick. One trend we've been noticing recently in the mid lane is the surge in the use of Unsealed Spellbook. Champions that don't need a keystone like Galio, Zoe, Orianna, and Twisted Fate are all great candidates for this rune. Pairing it with Nimbus Cloak also helps keep players safe, as they'll be able to activate a summoner spell and zoom right on out of sticky situations. Access to extra summoner spells is a huge convenience regardless. Summoner Cleanse, for example, isn't necessarily a spell that many mid laners want to run. They instead prefer to take summoners like Teleport to impact the map, or Ignite to provide some extra kill pressure. While those crucial cooldowns aren't available, Unsealed Spellbook allows players to temporarily fill the void with other useful abilities. Alright, next up, let's talk about the bottom lane. First, we got some advice for you bot laners out there. Learn to play around Guardian. While it'll be a little bit different next patch, the overall concept of this keystone remains the same. This keystone actually does have a little bit of a learning curve to it. You need to account for its range as well as its cooldown to play around it. Unlike other keystones, this is one that requires an ally in order to activate. Practice makes perfect, so make sure to start on the journey to perfection ASAP. Guardian is going to be much better next patch as it's receiving a bunch of quality of life buffs. Also, when playing champions like Ashe, make sure to use Approach Velocity. This point isn't necessarily specific to bot laners either. If you have an Ashe in your team, make sure to consider the possibility of running Approach Velocity. Whenever your allies afflict crowd control onto an opponent, you'll also gain some movement speed when running toward them. Take into account what champions are on your team, and once again, if you're playing Ashe, make sure to run it so that you can chase down your opponents after tagging them with a single slow. We also want to talk quickly about Ezreal and his new Death Stance build. This build is gaining traction across all regions and is slowly surfacing as the newest meta Ezreal build. It's absolutely broken, as Death Stance provides pretty decent stats, damage, lifesteal, and resistances. However, Ezreal players usually build an Iceborne Gauntlet as well. Together, these two items provide Ezreal with a ridiculous amount of armor, making him basically impossible to kill. Aside from being tanky, Ezreal has plenty of vamp to work with. Ezreal with this build has what every marksman wished they had, the ability to not get one shot. Another champion you guys need to watch out for is Senna. ADC Senna is set to receive a buff next patch, and one of the more notable changes is that her attack speed scaling ratio is going up quite a bit. There are going to be even more viable builds on her, and her damage output is going to go up pretty drastically in the late game as well. Senna will absolutely crush her competition as a result of these buffs. League's favorite, or arguably least favorite pair of lovebirds is set to take flight next patch. Xayah is receiving a direct buff, while the Guardian changes as well as the unflinching rune buff are going to make Rakan even stronger than before. Don't write off the buffs to unflinching one bit. Rakan loves tenacity. He's a slippery guy who can easily escape even the grimmest of situations. However, a single crowd control ability is all it takes for him to lose his footing and suddenly become useless. That's where the tenacity comes in. By reducing crowd control duration, Rakan has much better odds at surviving, and thus his team does as well since he'll be there to protect them. This tag team duo was previously seen as one of the most devastating duos to play against, but as of late they haven't been doing so hot. Let's keep it wholesome, don't need to talk about any potential relationship issues here. Things are looking good though, and they'll likely see an increase in their play rates next patch, so be prepared. Finally, we need to talk about supports. First up, if you're a support player, please try out Guardian. Like how we told our bot laners, you might have to take some time to get used to using it. Especially if you're a support player that hasn't or doesn't really ever use it, make sure to give it a try in some of your normal games. Guardian looks extremely promising, and you can't sleep on it next patch. Of all roles, it feels like unflinching will have the biggest impact for supports. Locking up supports prevents them from using their abilities. Without them, supports are actually just walking wards, as they typically don't have the necessary tools to solo carry duels with. At the same time, it's sometimes your job as a support to take one for the team and even tank abilities for an ally. Regardless, tenacity is super important on supports as it helps them do their job more effectively. Bringing the discussion back to Senna, we're here to proudly announce that Senna's tank build is the new meta. Running Grasp of the Undying alongside Black Cleaver and Frozen Mallet makes Senna so difficult to take out. During the laning phase, Senna has an easy time activating Grasp of the Undying. Even her Q can activate it, meaning that Senna has no trouble holding her own weight. Another advantage this setup is that unlike the Glacial Augment setup, each and every one of Senna's basic attacks will apply a slow because of the temperature. Glacial Augment, however, has a cooldown, meaning that there will be moments of vulnerability while she waits for it to come off cooldown. Next on the list for champions is Yuumi. Long story short, she's still ridiculously strong. Yuumi tags along with basically any ally, and she makes them feel like they're fed. One of Yuumi's greatest strengths is how difficult it is for opponents to actually lock her down. Yuumi is able to jump between allies who act to protect her. This means that Yuumi is usually the last one alive during teamfights. As the final survivor, that also means she's able to cycle through multiple rotations of her abilities. While many supports can provide incredible utility and value, none do so as safely as Yuumi does, hiding beside an ally at all times. If you've been banning her because you hate her, don't stop. She's absolutely ridiculous right now, don't doubt it. Finally, we want to quickly mention that approach velocity will be much stronger on supports than it was previously. Especially if you're laning with an Ashe, you need to make sure that you consider using this rune. Various champs can find ridiculous amounts of value from this rune. For example, Tahm Kench deals ridiculous amounts of damage and already has a built-in slow in his kit. Some extra movement speed doesn't hurt, and if he tags them with his own Q, he'll be able to chase them down even more effectively. Another good example of a support who can run it is Braum. Extra movement speed means that he'll be able to chase down opponents and apply passive stacks much more easily than before. Once again, don't write off the value of this rune even if you're playing support. Even if your champion doesn't have reliable crowd control, you'll gain some extra movement speed anytime an opponent is hit by any movement impairment. And that's going to cover our 10.12 meta update for you guys. If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like, comment, and also subscribe so you can stay updated with all the different kinds of content that we're releasing. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. We here at ProGuides really appreciate it. Until next time, good luck out on the Rift and happy grinding.